Report on the South Bayfront pedestrian bicycle bridge. Ignacio?
Good evening, Chair Davis, members of the agency. Tonight we'll give a status report on the planning of the South Bayfront pedestrian bicycle bridge. Can I have the monitor on the screen, please?
Did you hear that, Ignacio?
The messages that you may need to refresh.
If you need a hand, Ignacio, let me know.
Control yourself. The last time the pedestrian bicycle bridge was on the in a public forum was during the June 2005 agency meeting. At that meeting, staff provided a cost analysis on the proposed bridge, which involved looking at different ramp lengths and widths. Essentially, there was a long ramp design, a short ramp design, and a 8-foot width and a 10-foot width. There was also a report on the maintenance of the Amtrak station elevator. The estimated costs of the bridge itself, including the stairs and the elevators, were presented. And there was also some discussion on fire and building code issues on the proposed design. At that meeting, were also certain uncertainties provided that related to the design of the bridge and the ramps, including the status of the Sherwin-Williams site and redevelopment, as well as the Union Pacific Railroad easement and spur that goes into the Sherwin-Williams property. The direction given at that meeting was for staff to continue negotiations with UPRR to seek funding for the project, to finalize the Sherwin-Williams development, and at that time Sherwin-Williams had the proposed redevelopment project, and to continue the design of the greenway through the site. And at that time in 2005, it was anticipated that it would be another 3 to 5 years before we could get development started on the site. Since that time, there have been new developments. The Sherwin-Williams plant has closed. They've actually pulled the redevelopment plans, and the remediation plan is undergoing review with DTSC. At that time, they were, the lead agency was the regional board, so there's been a couple of steps back in that process. At the same time, the spur, which is, the spur is no longer active, though it might be used for the remediation of the site. UPRR has determined that they do not want to sell the yard at that time, and when I mean the yard, I will just...
Again, we're talking about the railroad, right?
Right, the railroad.
Okay.
When I talk about the yard, it's that orange section which is adjacent to the proposed greenway, the Horton Street Landing Park. So it's that strip which is adjacent to the proposed park. As well as there might be a need for an easement for the bridge itself. There's been significant progress on the greenway. Portions, the section north of 59th Street have all been developed except for the portion adjacent to the Glass House. At the time we were developing the bridge, Chiron, then Chiron, now Novartis, was preparing their designs for the park, which is called Horton Landing, and it may be appropriate to revise those plans given the ramp designs. In October, the CIP, there was an appropriation for the project at $8.47 million, and the staff has been applying for grants for the project from to various sources. The $8.47 million considers the long bridge design, which is what you have in front of you, which is a two-span design. And there have also been other developments, which I will bring up in the course of the rest of my presentation. Now, there has been consensus in these discussions. Basically, there is a desire to proceed with the design which is in front of you, which is the two-span project. And there's been a
Can I just interrupt it? You're saying there's consensus on that?
well, at that time,
Okay, sorry.
at that time, there we're sort of. I'm going to get back to where we might need additional discussions. So at that time, there was a favor for this design, and there was a preference for the extended ramps at 5% grade and 10 feet wide. And I think the 5% was an ADA accessible design.
Well, let me just say that 5% is not mandated by the ADA, but it's the threshold under which you can turn an elevation without having a landing.
Okay.
Okay, so that means that allows for the ramp, which is not even called a ramp if it's less than five or less. It allows it to be more organic, because if you are above 5, then every time you turn, there has to be a landing. So that's why I believe the Berkeley Bridge is so beautiful in that they do not exceed that 5%. So they can have a very nicely flowing ramp on both sides.
Thank you. This is just an early drawing of the two-span design. And this is one of the early renditions of the long version of the ramp.
Single span.
Well, yes. Mhm. Now, and this is a rendition of the long span bridge. This is a later version that was presented to council. And I think this is the last drawing that was presented, the drawing presented at the June 2005 meeting.
Ignacio, just so if there's people looking, the difference now is that, and this was a lot of John's doing before he was on the council, was to suggest these ramps. So that's what the big change we're seeing here is ramps on both sides,
Correct.
rather than just this stairway elevator thing that.
Right. The early, and I will come up, discuss further the ramps and the elevator and stairs.
Right.
They're coming in succeeding slides.
Okay.
Now, there are other considerations that have to be made that were not issues in 2005. And Hank can elaborate more on this. Is one issue is the ADA, and as it relates to stairs, elevators, and ramps. Our understanding is that there will be new guidelines on ADA, and it might affect the way we have our ramps designed as they are now. So, in which case, there might be it might be appropriate to discuss whether the ramps be shortened and an elevator be added, or other ways that you can equalize access among bicyclists, pedestrians, and those with disabilities. And how the current the ramps affect Horton Street, the Horton Landing design. Novartis is, for one, is concerned about the current design of the ramps as being close to the PDU building. The PDU building is a manufacturing building which has FDA approval, and they have concerns about the security of this building and the ramps being close to it. There are also concerns that the ramp design itself takes a substantial portion of the width of the park in that section where the ramp exists. And Novartis has proposed an alternative, and I just bring this up for discussion, what you have in front of you is the green is the schematic for what the ramps are proposed as, and the blue line is where the pedestrian, where the path would be. And Novartis,
The Ike path, you mean?
yeah, the Ike grade path. And Novartis has proposed 2 ramps extending north and south. And the dotted line on the south there is where Sherwin-Williams had proposed a roadway leading into their proposed development. So the ramp was lining up with that proposed road. There are concerns with this suggestion, being that the ramp length it will be a shorter ramp that is, would probably exceed the 5%. And there would not be a good connection to the 53rd Street pedestrian access, which was the goal of the earlier designs. So given all those things going on, all those design considerations, staff is recommending that the agency retain consultants to complete the preliminary design, taking the ramps, the Horton Landing Park, code issues, and security into consideration. This will involve a civil engineering firm, an architectural firm, and a pedestrian bike consultant that can provide a third party and a sort of neutral body to evaluate all the considerations as they relate to the bike ped and ADA issues. And as we develop those designs, we will go before the bike ped subcommittee, the planning commission, and before the agency and council. And also begin negotiations with Sherwin-Williams on the spur leading into their property, as well as with UPRR for the easements and the right-of-way. And that concludes my presentation.
Ignacio, do you have any kind of a tentative timeline for how we're going to proceed on this?
Well, we could begin selecting consultants almost immediately. We have them
Well,
identified.
I think all of us on the council are interested in seeing this project move forward in a timely fashion. And do I have agreement here that we'd like to see at least a tentative timeline for the steps that we're going to be taking and the dates that we're going to be taking these steps? Do I have agreement on that with the council?
Mayor Davis, I agree with that. One caveat, though, is that this is a project of over $8 million, and I'm not comfortable giving staff the approval tonight for their design team. I mean, a contract...
Oh, I don't think there's any, is there a suggestion here?
That's what
Yes, there's a suggestion for a design team in the
it
staff
said.
report.
It said, staff recommends the agency direct staff to return with a professional services contract with a design team that includes Mark Thomas for civil engineering, Charles Group International for architectural design, and the Berkeley Traffic Safety Center for bike and pedestrian design requirements. I'm not comfortable with that, given the amount of money involved and given the fact that we did a whole RFP process for a $15,000 contract. This is $8 million. I think we should do the same.
Well, John, what would you suggest that we spend a little more time on the front end here and perhaps take this to the Public Works Committee for consultant selection? What do you have in mind here?
Well, the Public Works Committee had a process for selecting a consultant for that $15,000 contract. I
Right.
thought that worked well. I didn't think that it was very time-consuming, and I thought that it was fruitful. So I would like a similar
Well, do we have the
process.
support of the other council members to pursue this?
Well, you know, every day that bridge is not open, that Bay Street's losing 1,000 customers that would be walking over it, so I think it needs to get expedited.
What is the process you're talking about, John, just quickly, without a lot of detail?
Request for proposals, essentially, or maybe scope, well, some process that solicits interest from professionals other than, these that were listed here. Just get ideas and bids.
This is an important project. I agree with you. Do we have the concurrence of the council? You have your direction. Do you need anything else, Ignacio?
Well, I have one question, though, about what we're directing them to do. This was like 3 different teams or 3 different companies that
No,
had pieces.
it's one design
consultant
team.
team.
One is an engineer, one is an architect, and the third one is new. It's a
The safety.
The traffic
safe,
safety.
yeah, bike and pedestrian design
Right.
requirements.
So I guess what my question is the RFP, as you conceive of it with this suggestion, is it going to solicit proposals for individual segments of that? Could somebody come in and just say, my company does bike pedestrian safety and we'll bid on that?
No, what
Or they
happened
have to
with-
come in as a combined team?
What happened
a
with
proposal?
the $15,000 thing was that there were documents submitted by these firms, and they were a team already. So it was a team submitting. So, for example, the one that we chose was a combination bicycle, pedestrian, expert, and engineer.
Okay.
So,
All right, so Pat, is that what you see us doing then?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that you would delegate this matter to the Public Works Committee. We would come up with a scope of services of the type of team members that we want, that the committee would approve. We'd go out and solicit those proposals. We'd get several back, and the Public Works Committee would go through those, select one, and make a recommendation in the council. We would bring that contract then back to the council level for actual approval. That would be all the elements of the design team. And if I could add one other that is not in the staff report that Fire Chief Cutright just brought to my attention today that I think is worth discussing also at the Public Works Committee is, as you recall, in 2005 when we had this discussion about the ramps, there was some concern about the proximity of the ramps to the parking structure, particularly next to Bay Street, and we think it would be appropriate to have someone who's an expert in mitigating that proximity and coming up with whatever kind of safety feature we would need to have to make the ramp work. So that might be a 4th person or 4th element of the design team.
Yeah, I'm okay with all of that, except for I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but after the Public Works Committee comes up with the basic guidelines that they're ready to go out with for the RFP, I'd like to see that back here for all of us to.
We could do that. It's up to you,
To
however
look
you
at.
want to do it. You can delegate it, or
Yeah.
you can bring it back to the council level.
No, I'd like to see it. I'm not on the Public Works Committee, and even if I go to that meeting, I can't vote at that committee, so I'd like to see
All
that
right,
here.
thank you, Ignacio.
I mean, is that okay with
I'd
everybody?
be
or-
satisfied if the Public Works Committee just took care of it.
We'll bring it back. Is there anyone who'd like to comment on this agenda item? Mr. Sway.
Hi, my name is Eugene Sway. I'm principal of Sway Design and Research in Emeryville. We've been here since 1989. I do international work in Europe, Africa, China, as well as the United States. I'm also happen to be the sole elected president of the PFA at Emeryville High School, and have worked with a number of engineers in the Emeryville area as well as in San Francisco on international projects and local projects. I have a particular interest in this project because I think that the bridge could be something far more than what we have looked at in the past. And I'll put it this way, that if you had a chance to create a project that paid homage to the past as well as create a vision for the future of Emeryville, and became a work of art or a destination in itself, what would that object look like? Also, could this bridge be more than just a pedestrian or bicycle walkway? Could it also be a historical and educational tool for the citizens and for the visitors to our area? And could it also be a opportunity for us to set a new precedent for the city of Emeryville? I go to so many of these hearings, and I hear people comment on how our buildings are quite boring in Emeryville. They're sick and tired of having another boring building. Well, what if we had a chance to create something truly remarkable, something that would be, shall we say, globally significant for the city of Emeryville to create a bridge that is something unprecedented for the future. So I started thinking about this, and for those that aren't familiar, can I use the overhead
Sure.
this way?
It's 15 cents a page.
I'm also a Watergate resident, and I see many of my fellow residents here. Here's what we're talking about, this area. This is the future Horton Park and the Bay shopping area. And we're crossing the railroad tracks, which are about 200 feet long. And what I came up with initially is this design, which in plan resembles a seashell, which I thought was quite appropriate since the human beings that resided here way before we did thrived on a seashell culture and on marine life. And so what this is a bridge that is much more than a bridge. It's an experience. It's a chance for pedestrians to experience something completely different and exciting, hopefully. The elevation of this is this. It's 100 feet high from the ground to the ceiling, or to the top of the parabolic arch. The arch is pulled backwards at 30 degrees to create more ability, more efficiency to hold up this front end, which is a semicircular front, as you remember from the plan over there. So this arch is pulled back 30 degrees and is pulling counter to the semicircular ramp. In another sketch, you see the parabolic arch or catenary arch, and then the ramp that hangs from the arch. On top is a series of photovoltaic solar cells. And what these cells do is they create renewable energy, electricity, to all of the lights in the entire area, not just the bridge, but also the pedestrian walkways and bicycle paths leading from one neighborhood to the next neighborhood. So what you might see looks something like
Eugene,
this.
make sure you use the microphone.
Oh, sorry. What you see might be something like this, which is a series of ramps, uninterrupted, continuing up to a semicircular arch, and then spiraling down to the other side with this parabolic form and the shiny photovoltaic solar cells on top. Something that thrusts the city of Emeryville symbolically into the future, because what you have is a wing-like, shell-like bridge that is a launching pad for the future, you might say, symbolically. And if we were to put the history of Emeryville from the first recorded human beings to the present time, and then left some space for the future, we could perhaps in mosaic form or ceramic tile form create a living history for Emeryville on that bridge, so that everyone who comes there would then be able to decipher a brief history in time. Also, here's a little sketch I did of what you might see entering that ramp or coming close to it. What you have is a series of curved pylons that have these copper totems, lighted totems on top that light up the area from above, and then these open hole continuous rails that have 4-inch holes by code, so that people can see through them and perhaps even have recycled bottle bottoms, different colors, inserted inside them. And so what you get is a living work of art, is an experience from your first visual introduction to it. You walk up through it, around it, and down to the other side, and you get the entire history of Emeryville in one walking. You also get an experience of the future. There's nothing like this bridge that I know of today. It uses a special kind of angled 30-degree angled parabolic arch system. I work with some of the best, well, some of the most accomplished engineers in the world, and they're absolutely satisfied that this will work. And in fact, we actually did a cost estimate, and it would come well within the $7.5 to $8.5 million to create it.
Really?
Really.
Could I-
And so you have renewable energy, you have the history of Emeryville, you have a work of art, you have a vision of the future, and you have something that's unlike anything else in the world. It seems to me that that would be something that would make the city of Emeryville proud, and would make us it would be a message from us to the world that we are looking to the future, and that we are looking in a very imaginative way.
Thank you, Mr. Swain.
Eugene, it's been great to see a bunch of your sketches and ideas. Your creativity knows no bounds, it seems.
Could
Thanks.
you give me a copy of that design on disc, if I give you my,
A copy of this?
if I give you my jump drive, could you put it on there?
Sure.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you
Are there
very
any
much.
questions? What I'd like from the council is, what do I need to know to continue to develop some of these ideas? Because I think they could be very valuable to the city.
Respond to the RFP that we just agreed to send out.
I mean, we're
Please,
going to have
please
it
do
be
that.
an open process, as we just agreed.
Right.
But this is fabulous. And I
Good.
thought you were going to tell us it was like double the price. I can't believe it.
Oh, no.
Thanks an awful lot,
Sure.
Eugene.
Sure.
Okay,
It's my pleasure.
communications and reports, department heads.
And I apologize, this goes back to the bridge and something that I just want to remind staff, two concerns. I know we're very much at the beginning processes, but I want to remind staff that I raised this, Hank, before, because when we talked about the material for this, we had talked about Cortan steel, and again, I got input back from Berkeley that becomes brittle in the salt air after a while, and is not a long-term use. So I'd like to get, if that's going to be a suggested material again down the road, we need some input back on whether that's so. And second of all, within the scope of what you do, I would like to see some language, I don't want to micromanage here, but some language that addresses the issue of trying to make this overcrossing, whomever is selected to do it and whatever the design is, as pigeon-proof as possible, so that we don't create a place that people are running across the bridge instead of walking when they'd rather not be. So.
Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Dick reminded me, I had a question on the bridge, and I noticed, Joseph Mudd, you're here, and I'm going to have to put you on the spot. So one of the exhibits, and I vaguely recall that I mentioned this before, so remind me if I did. One of the exhibits shows the Horton Street landing, and there's a line that's pretty close to parallel with the tracks, and it marks the eastern boundary of the park. And if you follow that line, there's a point at which the Novartis property bumps out. There's kind of a bulb out, and as far as I can tell, there's no building there now. And so my question was, and it doesn't have to be answered now, but my question was, why doesn't that line just continue straight? Why does it have to come out? And the reason I'm concerned with it is that at the point that it comes out, it narrows the park. It narrows the width of the park. And is it just a historical accident? Is that where a property line was, or is Novartis intending to build a building that juts out like that into the park? So if you could get back to us, that would be helpful.
I would say just really,
You have to
Just
get
talk
up
to
to
the mic.
this is Joseph Mudd, Novartis. This is not a technical response. In general, the commitment is to build a park on certain parcels of land, and so what you see there is parcel boundaries.
I see.
But I think the thing to do is to look at it on a piece of paper and get the question really clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Happy
you,
to do that
Joseph.
anytime.
Okay,
Just want to make one mention that with respect to the Corten steel, I did check with Professor Starning, and he did say that was satisfactory.
Yeah.
okay.